Security types like to refer Security types like to refer to it as shrimp among whales. China has shown itself to be hostile. In 2017, after South Korea allowed the deployment of American anti-missile system intended chiefly as as a defense against North Korea, China China punished it with a painful economic boycott. Uh, Our relations with Japan, a fellow American ally, continue to be disrupted. Or by simmering disputes over Japan's obligation to Korea's elderly. Forced to work in Japanese factories and brothels during the Second World War. North Korea, fellow shrimp is technically at war with South Korea. And is continuing to build up its weapons, both nuclear and conventional weapons. The shifting dynamics of alliance with America are of particular concern. Donald Trump kept demanding that South Korea cover more of the costs of keeping two and 28,500 American troops in the country, and muttered about withdrawing them altogether. In 2019, he called off joint exercises that have been held with South Korea every year since 1961. Even with a new president in the White House, America will expect South Korea to take on more responsibility and develop its capability in areas such as intelligence gathering, planning, naval and air defense, says a military officer involved in the reforms. The new administration will be more diplomatic and polite about it. So I expect we'll get on better. But their objectives will not change fundamentally, he says. To some degree, America's aims match those of South Korean government, which would like more say in alliance. At present, command of all South Korean forces it will be handed to American in the event of a war in the peninsula, on the peninsula. This arrangement dates back to the origins of alliance during South Korean War, when the South was considered unable to defend itself against an assault from the North. But in the early 2000s, the left center government of but in the early 2000s, the left of center government of Roh Moo-hyun began trying to build a capacity to take back the control of the country's own forces. The current government, which is led by Moon Jae-in, who was Roh's chief of staff, had hoped to complete the transfer by the end of Mr. Moon's by the end of Moon's term next year. But it looks unlikely that the armed forces' capabilities will have improved to the degree required in time. Other aspects of reforms are progressing faster. The number of troops declined to 500. The number of troops declined to 555,000 to the end of last year, down from 600,000 in 2018. It is supposed to fall below 500,000 by the end of this year, with the bulk of the costs made to the army. Mandatory military service is being shortened to 18 months. Wages of conscripts are rising sharply. The government aims to hire more women and civilians to work for the armed forces, to help bridge the gap between soldiers and the rest of society. Last year, the country launched its first military communications satellite. It also secured America's agreement to modify past agreement to permit it to use solid fuel in missiles, which allows them to be launched more quickly and easily. That should pave the way for better deterrence against the North. Although the South says it plans to launch missiles mainly this way. Defense spending rose by 2.8% defense spending rose by 8.2% in 2016 and by 7.4% in 2019. This year's budget envisages an increase of 5%. Despite intense competition for funds created by the pandemic. Some of the money will be misspent. Last year, for instance, the Navy announced that it would soon build an aircraft carrier. The armed forces, for example, announced that it will start to build. Last year, the Navy, for instance, announced that it would soon build an aircraft carrier. A pointless trophy in the eyes of many. It's like having a golden gun, says military. It's like having a golden gun, says defense planning. It's like having a golden gun, says defense planning officer. But the armed forces are also stocking up on drones, submarines, and anti-submarine defenses. But the armed forces are also stocking up submarines and anti-submarine defenses. Among other sensible purchases. In public, Mr. Moon's administration insists. Mr. Moon's administration insists that it is committed to peace with North Korea. And does not expect fundamental changes to the alliance with America. The cheery language, however, masks quiet but elaborate contingency planning. But cheery language masks quiet but elaborate contingency planning. In case either